Well, it's funny. The parallels here, Chris, are amazing. It's 52 years since Daniel Ellsberg, the last great whistleblower on the Defense Department, was literally his psychiatrist's office was burgled in I think 1971. In an effort to try and discredit him. And medical records of Daniel Ellsberg were procured by the Nixon administration and used to try and denigrate him. It blew up in the intelligence community's face at the time. And frankly, I think there should be an inquiry into the circumstances of how sensitive records pertaining to a decorated combat veteran's file found their way to a journalist, not through the proper channels. This could have been requested under FOI, as is normal, but the county sheriff has confirmed that did not happen. And this is a man who suffered, literally had a phone call with one of his best friends, a guy serving in special operations. That best friend finished the phone call, and then apparently he shot himself very soon after. And that's a terrible trauma. I've suffered the loss of friends myself like that. It's a horrible thing to happen. And for anyone to seek to use the suffering of veterans, people who are dealing with PTSD, is utterly reprehensible. It's contemptible, and it should be exposed. There should be an investigation into how a sensitive file like this was so obviously leaked within the intelligence community to try and discredit a good human being.
PTS is a very common, misunderstood, underdiagnosed, and often shame-inducing, wrongly, syndrome. Most of the clinical community now, in fact, has dropped the D because they don't believe it is a disorder. One, that word is somewhat of a pejorative, but that also it requires different categorization within their own their own processing of what kind of malady it is. We just put up the stat that 1 in 5 veterans suffer from this, but it's all over society. And what they've done now by doing this is made Grusch even more credible. Because 1, he had talked about this on his own, so there's no gotcha. 2, he is expressing that he was able to muster the resolve to get treatment, and God bless his wife for helping him to do that. Getting the treatment that so many avoid because they're afraid of having the exact conversation that you had with him, and good on you for asking him the questions. And now we know that anything that they thought they had on him, he already admitted. He treated it in a way that a lot of people don't, right? Because they don't have the resolve or the resources, or they're worried about what people will think, and that the government knows he went through it and kept his classification status, his clearance. So they didn't have any questions about his acuity or his perception after this, and they knew about it. That leaves us with the main question. Did the Intercept guy give any clue as to who gave him the information?
None at all, sir. None at all. But we do know it didn't come from the only other possible source, which is the county sheriff. And can I emphasize, Chris, Dave actually wants me to emphasize that he holds the mental health struggles of US military and intelligence community personnel very close to his heart. And he believes it should be discussed. It shouldn't be stigmatized. And it's important we talk about this. There's an epidemic. I've lost very, very dear friends in the military in Australia who I met in Afghanistan, people who have suicided because they couldn't cope with what they had to deal with. It's absolutely outrageous that somebody would think that they can use this for an attempt to try and discredit a good human being. And the other thing, too, that needs to be emphasized is the Inspector General of the intelligence community has already found that Mr. Grusch is a victim of reprisals and harassment. There's already been a warning to the intelligence community that they must behave themselves and not continue harassing and taking reprisals against Mr. Grusch and other whistleblowers. And what utter contempt are they showing for the rule of law that they are flagrantly ignoring that edict from the Inspector General? This is a really grave issue of a complete flouting of the obligations of the intelligence community to heed the laws set down by Congress.
Hey, look, if anybody had any question as to whether or not there was hype around this idea that the government was fighting transparency. After all of your reporting and what Grusch had put out there and what came out at the hearing about them not wanting to show up themselves and keeping other people quiet, now you know.